Oi, I tell you what, I don't even know where to begin to introduce today's podcast. Today, I interview Pat Crowley from Chapul Farms here in my beaver state of Oregon. This is one of my neighbors, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with Pat with you guys. I think if you follow the YouTube channel for no-till growers, you may have been one of the many thousands of people who repeatedly viewed the black soldier fly composting operation. Pretty recent, and if you haven't, go check that out. But this is like that YouTube video, sort of jacked up on all the roids. On Pat's LinkedIn, this is how he describes his founding of Chapul. In 2019, I launched Chapul Farms as a way to continue growing the regenerative potential of insects to bioconvert food and ag waste into healthy foods and microbially rich soil. We work with selected domestic and international insect farms to scale their operations and provide the highest quality insect products to B2C and B2B markets. As project developers, we are developing some of the world's largest insect farms focused on uncompromising sustainability metrics. I've been interviewed and quoted by CNN, Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and I've spoken on TEDx, university, and international stages. It's all true. He was on the Shark Tank. So Pat's been around the block and interviewed by a lot of people. So I'm really happy he was able to sit down with me because what they're doing is truly awesome. And I'm really excited to follow this work as it goes forward. If you're interested in any aspect of insect agriculture, but specifically the sort of potential for locally designed, zero waste food production systems, this is going to be one for you. I'll let Pat take it from here.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit rimmelgreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a Rimmel tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process. So make sure to check them out. Today's episode is also brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud sponsor of the No-Till Market Garden podcast. Since 1973, Johnny's has supported farmers and gardeners with superior seeds, tools, and information to help ensure their growing success and help feed their communities and families. The research farm is at the heart of Johnny's, where they trial thousands of varieties and tools every year. Their breeding program uniquely focuses on introducing varieties that meet the needs or solve the challenges mixed market, small farmers, and avid gardeners face. Visit johnnyseeds.com for innovative new varieties and time-tested favorites to grow this season. You can also browse their online growers library, link in the description, for a wealth of free educational resources. The employee owners at Johnny's look forward to growing with you. All right, enjoy the show.
Pat Crowley, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have this conversation with you finally.
Yeah, likewise. No, I've been trying to connect with you for a while, or just been excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have one of my homies on the podcast because we talk to people all over the world, and having somebody in my own backyard doing something as cool as you are is pretty exciting to share with all the people listening. So let's catch them up to speed. Tell us who you are, where you're working, and tell us what is Chapul Farms, and just give us the whole rundown.
Okay, the whole rundown. So I'm Pat Crowley, based here in McMinnville, Oregon, and founder and CEO right now of Chapul Farms. It's Chapul, as the company has been around for 11 years, started out in 2012. And then this kind of version of Chapul Farms is about 5 years old, 4.5, 5 years old, where kind of this new evolution here in Oregon. So I don't know, I probably need to start at the very beginning, don't I? Yeah, so I'm from Arizona originally, grew up there, went to school in Southern California. That's where I started getting into kind of more environmental education and permaculture and things like that. And so that was kind of the first time that was on my radar, and came out of school a little bewildered by, the scale of these planetary trajectories we're on. And it's, such big things that to look at. And then kind of over the course of the next couple of years, I did some traveling, hitchhiked all the way through Central America, spent some time down in Panama. Kind of on that journey is where I saw water as one of the bigger issues of just about every community on the planet. And that was an area I could just dive into and focus and kind of do my part, just to kind of contribute to some solutions for some of these problems I was seeing, or educated kind of people in this arena had kind of put me towards. And so I went back to school at University of Arizona for watershed hydrology, which was a really cool program. It was a watershed being the landmass delineated by kind of the ridge tops where all water would funnel into your area. And so you're kind of defining human activity around geography and around water and around life systems, as opposed to strictly geopolitical borders. And then so it's looking at soil biology and water chemistry, but also social sciences, and how have humans kind of managed this tragedy, the commons, kind of managing resources, not exploiting them throughout human history. What are different models of people doing this successfully and not successfully, which is the more common
examples
model.
of that.
Yeah, it's probably today that is a more common model. And so that was, the first job out of school was with the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And that was an incredible opportunity. My first big project was quantifying water usage on the Hopi Reservation.
Oh, wow.
And mostly for agriculture. And so I got to work with, currently the Hopi Reservation has the longest continually inhabited settlement in all of North America. And so in that same spot, practicing a style of agriculture for, hundreds and hundreds to thousands of years. And so it was an incredible opportunity to learn from a very resilient culture. It's a harsh growing climate. It's a high elevation on the Colorado Plateau, high winds, late frosts, early frosts, but also, very hot temperatures, low rainfall. It's just kind of everything to make agriculture more challenging, but they've been, have a successful model of it. And so that was helpful for calibrating my look kind of into the future, I guess. The further you look into the past, it helps you kind of look out towards the future and that a little bit more long-term vision of where I wanted to dedicate my career path and things like that too. So, but this is really setting the stage. I haven't even mentioned the word insects once yet, have I?
This is great. This is great. We want to hear it all.
So that was a very formidable project. From kind of the skill sets that I was building, but also some of their views on hope and things like that. There's a spirituality they have associated with kachinas and past ancestors, and how you beckon them to this current generation that's living and needs water in this very water scarce environment. You do so with song and with dance and with laughter, and kind of this like the most critical time to be doing all that is in these times of drought and famine and scary planetary trajectories that we're on and things like that. But so that concept of just unfallible hope, I think, was kind of, it really solidified there. And so I then did some conservation, or tried to put together programs to incentivize water conservation in agriculture. From that state planning level on the public side, and that's where I really saw how kind of the opponent, what's pulling in the other direction. Looking at markets and this real short-termism. I like the line I heard from a farmer of like, we know how to do this, we know how to farm, but the markets are always telling us we're wrong. So it's this, that push-pull was really eye-opening, I guess. Yeah, just kind of getting deeper into the root cause of some of our challenges that we see with setting future generations up for a sustainable, more permanent form of agriculture. I did some other projects, worked for the federal government, again, kind of saw where true incentives and decisions were being made and kind of frustrated by some of that. So I started kind of looking to entrepreneurship as a different model that might suit me for kind of wanting to dig in deeper. And about that time is when I learned about insects from a TED Talk. I was just riding the bus on the way to work and listening to, it was an iPod at the time, or before you had it on phones, back in the day. And it was just this Dutch professor talked about insects and the viability of them and all this. And from my work, I was like, okay, we need some major changes, like very foundational changes to how we're managing our natural resources and how we engage with them in our civilizations. And so I thought, okay, insects. I started looking at it. I was like, that's an example of a significant addition to agriculture. Here's an entire trophic layer that we're currently going the wrong direction with. We're eliminating this entire, insects as a category, and they're so critical. And in fact, they are keystone variables in healthy, functioning terrestrial ecosystems. Take out insects, the whole thing collapses.
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, we need them a part of the global landscape of agriculture. How do I do that? And I was really excited just from that water perspective. That was my starting point. Okay, this uses a lot less water than what we're currently using. And I was coming from, areas where we're growing alfalfa in the middle of the desert, because you get 6 seasons, you get 6 cuts, 6 harvests out of it. That, of course, it's amazing climate for it, but the water, you're borrowing it from the next generation. That's all you're doing it. And we're, in Arizona, we're pumping water uphill through the desert for 384 miles to get to these fields. It's like, wow, this is so backwards. What are we doing here? It's that water was just the starting point of insects, of looking at, okay, this is game changer. These are orders of magnitude more water efficient for water in, protein out. It was still, I guess, in all honesty, a linear kind of mindset about it, just being more efficient with that one resource. But then over the course of this last decade, being associated with them, I've truly appreciated them for the more circularity function that they play, and and then beyond that, the matrices and ecosystems. But ultimately, that's a pretty lofty thing to do. Is just throw a it's like that Banksy picture of kind of, okay, it's with the mask over the face, hucking a bouquet into a war zone. And so I thought starting point would be, okay, markets are big drivers. Let's start a market for insects, insect products, and make it look like the world around us, make it look like food products, make it look like ingredients, kind of just as a starting point. And so I started a cricket bar company. Chapul is in its infancy was, I wanted to engage directly with people. I wanted an experience, not just kind of talking about something. I wanted people to interact with it, and something that would really start this global conversation and be a catalyst of inspiration for this movement, whatever you want to call it. And so it's like, okay, I want to get insects into the landscape. What insect should I start with? And I started researching. What it turns out we've been growing crickets here in the U.S. for almost 100 years commercially, and so that was the entry point. Was okay. There's a model for insect agriculture here in the U.S. with crickets. And I worked with the cricket farmers. I called up the FDA and said, "Hey, I have this idea. Can you give me a little guidance?" And they were blown away that anyone would approach them first. But that was my history. I was a regulator,
Right.
But they were appreciative of it, and so we kind of walked that pathway together. And then we figured out how to process crickets. There was a lot of I looked into the human history of it in North America, a plethora of experiences with, hundreds of different species of insects. And one way that in that area, I was in Utah. I launched the company in Utah. I had been living there at the time. And there was some human history there with drying crickets and katydids and grasshoppers out in the sun and then using stone tools to grind them down. Actually, this was really interesting. There was in the Great Salt Lake, some archaeologists or anthropologists, out of University of Utah had kind of put together pieces of evidence and kind of came to the conclusion that that was an example of the most efficient food gathering ever recorded in terms of human calorie spent versus caloric return. And what it was a go shoot bands would walk along the banks of the Great Salt Lake after these big storms, and the high water line would be, they said, the anthropologists found one day it was like 6 inches deep for like 6 feet wide of just protein for miles along the banks of the Great Salt Lake, and it was salted. And so they would just store it in the caves there for all winter long. And in a course of 1 or 2 storms, they'd have all their protein for their families for all winter.
Wow.
And they would, it was incredible, like so fascinating, to think of how much energy goes into feeding our families all winter long. If you could pull that off in a day.
Yeah. I mean, crunchy and delicious. I mean, salted already for you.
Salted, yeah. Anyway, they would mill them down to kind of a dense cake type thing, and so that was kind of some inspiration for the original format of the product. We just used convection ovens, and then I found a stone mill, and I didn't have a big piggy bank to start this company with, so I started it with a Kickstarter campaign. I put in $2,000 of my own money, and that was for like FDA label, some tests for the FDA label. And then we did a $10,000 Kickstarter campaign and raised $16,000. And so that was what funded this initial kind of product that we sourced this cricket. And we, bought a little stone mill off of Craigslist, and we bought a little blender off of Craigslist, and did little rent by the hour kitchens. And actually, our very first kitchen was a family friends had a pizzeria. And he said, "Yeah, you can come and use my oven to cook these crickets, but you don't tell anyone, and you enter through the back door on Sundays when we're closed, but do not tell us." Deal. And so it was a bunch of volunteers in Utah, just friends and people that were excited about the idea. We'd get together and we'd make this thing that we called cricket flour, and then we came up with recipes for different handmade energy bars and protein bars, and figured out how to make those and make them into a little pouch and a sticker, an FDA compliant label we put on by hand, and then go and sell it at the local food co-op and farmers markets, festivals and things like that. And it was just a kind of a lemonade stand bootstrap model of the business. We'd sell out, and we'd buy twice as much inventory, and we'd sell out. We just kept growing that way. And then that's when, we went to a big food show in Anaheim, the Natural Products Expo West.
Yeah.
And we launched our products there. And it was the first time insects had been at the shows, like 80,000 people. And we weren't really sure how we were going to be received by the food world. But to our surprise, this woman came up to us like on setup day, the very first day, and we're at the upstairs, the cheapest booth you could possibly get. Yeah, the nosebleeds. It's just two of us there with our t-shirts and our handmade canvas background, our handmade bars. But this woman came up and tried our bar while we were set up. She was like, "Oh, thank goodness!" And then we're like, what's going on? She's like, "Here's this award for best product of the show. You're being nominated for it." She's like, "I just had to make sure it tastes good. I've been reading all about this. Love the theory behind the concept, and these taste amazing." So before the show even got started, we won this big award, and so that was a really helpful kind of entrance into the food world. And it was, it actually coincided right around that time. We were driving to the show in our van, still putting on labels for all of our inventory in the van. And we got a call that we were going to be appearing on Shark Tank in 2 weeks.
Right.
I had filmed for it. And so here's this handmade farmer's market stand now entering into the largest food show and going on to national television to millions of people kind of in the same month. So it was very
daunting.
Well, it just kind of came. Yeah. Yeah. I called it, going into Shark Tank, I all of our kind of staff and everything, I said we modeled our approach after rafting in the Grand Canyon. The approach into Lava Falls, it's the biggest rapid. Yeah. Okay. Up top is the ledge hole at the top of the rapid, right in the center. And I had worked as a guide, and so I got advice from people that had been down hundreds of times, and so I would just listen so intently from these wise elders. And the one that I particularly liked is he said, it's called the Jedi move. You get your left tube of the raft on this little ripple that's kind of leading right into the ledge hole, and it's real subtle, but you start pushing along that ripple line. It feels like you're pushing right to the ledge hole. And that's where the Jedi comes. You just have to trust the Force. And you push towards this thing. If you do, it just sets you perfectly to drop in and hit the next feature, which is this V wave. And you just hit it perfectly. Both V's hit the sides of the boat at the same time. And then after that, you go through the mountain waves. But he said, so you do the Jedi move, you throw your oars forward as hard as you can, and then you just get down in the bottom of the boat. So he said, "Don't be a hero. Don't be a hero. Just
fucking roll, man.
Get your butt in the bottom of that boat and hold on tight." And the next move is get up and figure out which direction your boat is pointing. So that was our entrance into Shark Tank. It's okay, give it all we got, and then the exposure, all that, we'll just kind of figure out which way our boat is pointing before we row into the monster waves. So it was this, it kind of went big, I guess. But just so much love came out of it. From both the natural food world and then Americans, there was so much positive feedback that we got. There's certainly negative feedback we got, and there's a couple of death threats that came, but they were outweighed by marriage proposals. So we came out even
in mass balance.
Yeah. So you got to see how crazy the world was. It's kind of my entrance into social media too, of a little bit reading comments and deciding, that's not a good space to be in.
Enough of that.
Enough of that. So it was, it came out of that. We were hand making all the bars, at that time. And so then we were flooded with orders after Shark Tank. And, we had set up a website and got it ready to get all that traffic. And so that amount of cash was what paid for then. We went into large co-packing, went to a big bar manufacturer. So that was just this great launch into it. And we told people, okay, it's thanks for your order. It's going to be about 9 weeks till we send your product, or we'll refund you. And less than 1% of the people asked for a refund, and it was just flooded with you guys, you're doing a great job. And then, we just kind of started. We launched into national retailers, and they kind of figuring it all out as we went. And still fairly bootstrapped. Mark Cuban had invested $50,000, and so that was our one investment into the company. And then
was it a giant check? Did you get to giant check into the?
There was no check at all. It was just like a wire transfer. So
unsexy,
unceremonial. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, rather than a check, they send you a psychologist, like right when you finish filming, because it's crazy. They have you in a little trailer, like a little Hollywood trailer. Yeah. And immediately, first thing, a psychologist comes and visits you, make sure you're all
right. That says a lot, really.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay. So you're making bars.
Yeah.
And like skyrocketing to massive success. And somehow you end up in a very different place. So
yeah. I'll get there. I promise. Well, just even there, it was this like massive growth, I would say. People, it's like, oh, you've arrived. Like, wow, you're on Shark Tank. Like, you're successful. You're so successful. But it really didn't feel successful. It was just like so chaotic, and we're always out in front of our skis, and wasn't like we were like wildly profitable. We were just barely covering expenses. But it was having that kind of that external kind of view was interesting and kind of a little dizzying from kind of that perspective. But I guess the conclusion after we're growing, whatnot, is I started this for the agricultural side of it, and we're really it's a long way to where we have an impact from this model right now, and for the larger brands and kind of more to get engaged into the space, they needed to see a more resilient supply chain, a bigger supply chain. It wasn't interesting for anyone that was of scale until there was a supply chain. And as I was going in, of course, I'm learning about the advancements and things are happening in Europe, and the United Nations is FAO's getting into it and doing some programs in Africa, and that's when the farming side of it started to come together, because that was the point of it to begin with anyway. And so got involved with that's where really the transition over to the current species that we're working with, black soldier fly, came about, because crickets were starting to become limited in their feeds that they could eat. It really that circular values when they can eat these byproducts that aren't going into the food system right now are problematic for us. Going into landfills, that's the golden chalice. Can we keep this material out of landfills and have that feed insects? And black soldier fly were really kind of leading that charge. They're a saprophytic species, meaning they eat just rotting, decaying material. And so, started kind of making a transition over to that species. And then what was really kind of building the supply chain were more of the animal feed markets for the fat protein of the larva from that. And so that was a way to really accelerate the supply chain. And so we started morphing the company over to building those markets, and we had this brand value, and we kind of leveraged that equity over onto that side. And then we've been part of some global projects, and really saw the project development model a little bit. We were involved in a project in Indonesia. It never got off the ground, but it was beautiful in design. It was 15 companies from all over around the world, and brilliant physicists and biologists, and kind of that's where we were pitching. It was a $500 million kind of mega project to take these waste streams that are burned there in Indonesia out of ag processing. And that's where I kind of got the feedback from large amounts of capital, what the risk profile that they see. And I started learning that language. And just listening to the people that had the positions of being able to invest in the capital that's needed to do things differently and to build around what we have right now. And there are large investments that need to be made. And so they're a critical stakeholder for kind of building out infrastructure. And so that's where Chapul came about. Chapul Farms was kind of listening to that feedback about how to leverage that capital to build out some more of the insect supply chain and really kind of trying to meet the world where it's at in terms of food production. So what does it look like right now? How do we get insects in a big way as a way to start building more of an ecosystem, building trophic layers? We need more biodiversity. So there's a big starting point. And that's, through the course of that, that's where kind of, again, I referenced that more from a linear model to now circular. And really kind of the deeper we got into their frass and their manure, the insects eat this waste stream. Their larvae is high quality fat and protein, but then there was this unsung hero of their manure and the frass. And that's really the conversion from linear to circular to now more matrices. And when they consume this food waste, their gut microbiome is incredible. It's this entire galaxy of microbes that function like a healthy ecosystem, and they do amazing things. So, of course, there's nitrogen fixing bacteria in there, but that's just one player in this beautiful mix that then, as we know, is essential for soil health. It's a living system, and it's not just linear relationships. It's not even just circular relationships. It's interactions and fungi, and bacteria, and protozoa. They all work together. And they are, I say often, insects are midwives to entire ecosystems of microbes. And so that really kind of leads into what we're doing here in McMinnville. And so we're based on a farm very specifically because I saw there was a lot happening with insect agriculture as we were going down this path, especially in Europe and in South Africa and in Asia. There were really a lot of very innovative projects. But most of them look like, again, they're following market drivers. And so they look like protein factories. And we dedicated our space here and our intention here to really elevating the role of frass and soil into the story of insect agriculture and trying to make it kind of the primary character. There's twice as much frass by volume than the larva. And so how does that really lead the charge for insects being the facilitator of a greater biodiversity on our planet? And, most of our planetary impact is in agriculture. So let's start there. Let's work there. So I don't know. I've remotely explained our business model here, but
well, we can get into that more, but I think it's really incredible because you didn't sell the first company that you started. You just transitioned it into something that worked more in line with your values. And I think that's challenging. And I don't think that it would be the sort of natural, not natural, but the most likely way that anyone who maybe had an MBA would go about things. But I think it shows the integrity of the intention behind what you're trying to build. And this soldier fly biology is so fascinating. Anything that's capable of digesting and upcycling the diversity of material that they are capable of is going to come with, as you say, and I want to double click on this because I think it's something that people don't think enough about. What it takes to digest is a universe. Compared to, a small moon or a world's worth of microbes, you need a universe of microorganisms in your gut to be able to do what the soldier flies do. So,
the human beings need a universe of microbes to digest our food, to really, optimize our health and functionality and our immune systems and our emotions and,
Totally. And to be able to start putting that potential back into our agricultural soil. So let's get into the model now as it is. Go ahead and start wherever you want.
Yeah. So I think that leading in, that's the most important thing. That's what we're doing. And so we're using a business model as a tool to do that. The business model is not the driver necessarily. Business model is the tool for this bigger mission that we're on. which summarizes to increase biodiversity in agriculture. It's kind of concisely, that's what we're trying to do, and we're leveraging insects to do that. And so as we're building new markets, of course, the business model will change. And as technology is rapidly accelerating for how we engage with insects at kind of larger populations, that of course, the business model is going to evolve. Excuse me. And so right now, our business model is a project developer model, is the best way to summarize it. So we are putting together all the pieces, the critical pieces, and all the stakeholders for commercial insect farms. So these are for-profit business models to sell product. And the products that the projects sell are right now black soldier fly larvae, and those are sold into right now poultry. Chickens love them. Fish love insects. Like such a no-brainer. Trout are 100% insectivores at early stages of life. Same with salmon. The juvenile is an insectivore. So of course we should feed them insects. And then that's the larva side, and then the commercial side for the frass goes as a soil amendment. But this is these supply chains haven't existed in large volume, so we have to build these markets. It's not a simple find a customer, sign a contract, and go. You have to do trials. You have to engage with kind of all the stakeholders associated with these markets, and we have to engage with the FDA and the USDA and outline protocols and for compliance for something. There has to be a regulation to comply with. So it's just blazing new territory a lot of the ways for kind of this project developer model. But we have kind of this off-the-shelf technology. We're trying to make it as easy as possible, kind of as, I said I speak the language now, so we're de-risking the financial investments for capital to pay for kind of the upfront build a insect farm. And we try to take kind of like I call it a point source model. Point source pollution is a single point where a lot of pollution enters into a water body, whatever that air, and then address it there. And so we're trying to co-locate these insect farms with large volumes of wet organic material that's waste product out of agricultural processing, producing, etc. Beverage processing. And so what that looks like, we have a project right now with whiskey, the byproduct from whiskey. In the state of Kentucky, they've saturated all the animal feed markets that would need that. Now it's ending up in landfills. And so it's this need of the state to address this kind of waste stream at this point. And so we are kind of putting together all the pieces, lining up what that feed looks like, doing the trials, knowing how much larvae will come off, how much revenue can this facility expect, putting together financial investment kind of presentation for it, then lining up the customers, finding the site, getting all the environmental permitting put together, environmental assessments, and all that kind of typical project developer kind of tasks for commercial insect farms. So we have several projects. We took a landscape overview of the United States and thought, where's the kind of more strategic entry points, et cetera. And then we come to Oregon, and I like the line that Robin O'Brien uses often. Her mantra is, you can't fix a broken food system with a broken financial system. Yeah, it's like, and the more you learn about it, the more obvious that is. So if you have a financial system that is very much predominantly driven by short-term incentives, you can get in and get out, and you're not there for the long-term health of the company or its stakeholders around it, be it community members, human beings, planetary, water bodies, et cetera, then it will lead to negative outcomes in terms of health. And so we see that in agriculture, we see that in fertilizer production, we see that in kind of everywhere. And so how do you, as we're looking at the kind of the broader landscape of the future of ag, how do we then create a financial system and infrastructure that is looking out for the long-term interest of all of the stakeholders and the environment around us and the ecosystem around us. And as Carol Sanford calls it, the life shed. I really like that. So not just now delineating an area from kind of geographic or geologic boundaries, but more life systems. Okay, all of these life systems, how do we all work together? And so Oregon we said, all right, first things first, we're going to be patient about a project here in Oregon. First principle of permaculture is to observe. So we're going to just observe, and we're going to engage, and we're going to do I like the terminology of kind of a transition from like place-based design to place-sourced design. So have an insect project here in Oregon be designed and sourced from the community and not just us plug and play a model into it. And so we've been working on a commercial project here in Oregon for several years, very patiently, very deliberately. And now we're kind of putting together the pieces for what that might look like in McMinnville, where you're really capitalizing on the potential of insects to take these waste streams. Here in Oregon, it's like half of our material that goes into landfill is food waste, and we're trying to reduce that by 50% by 2030. The government mandate is there, but we don't really have a pathway to it. DEQ is trying to figure it out. We're all trying to kind of put together a plan for it, but there's not a like silver bullet. And so how can we contribute to that? Here in McMinnville, it's kind of an easy microcosm. We're a small community. You can kind of you can identify where all the food waste comes from the community, from the kind of concentric circles. And so that's what we're working on here is this model for how can insects address the food waste of our local community. And then, the sales side of it, the commercial products, you go to I think there's 5 retail outlets in McMinnville, a town of 35,000, that sell dried insect products. They're all imported. So it's a small town, has plenty of market need for local production of insects. And then, of course, then we get into the frost side and the soil side, and there's just global leaders in soil and soil health here in Oregon. This is a spectacular place for engaging with truly global experts in soil health. And hey, how can we work with FRAS, and where's the best place for this to be incorporated into our long-term soil health plans and management strategies? And so that's again kind of going back to why our current facility here in McMinnville, which we call our innovation center, is located on a farm with a really innovative landowner, just an incredible human being, Ramsey McPhillips. The property's been in his family for more than 100 years currently, and so he's got a longer-term vision of what he wants that land to look like. For those people that it'd be hard not to know who he is if you're here in McMinnville.
We love you, Ramsey.
But for people that haven't met, famous, infamous, wonderful Ramsey, he goes by a nickname of the landfill slayer. So his property is adjacent to a landfill, which he
a dude named Ramsey really needs an additional moniker.
I'm sure that I know that's not the only one, but you have to sit down with coffee with Ramsey to get the other ones out of him. Anyway, I really appreciated his approach. Okay, so he fought this. Talk about long-term vision. He fought a 20-year battle to really shut this landfill down that's located on a floodplain. Probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. Wasn't the community's waste. It was all coming from Portland Metro for the most part. But I appreciated he's like, I can't just say no to things. I need to provide a solution as well. So he started the nonprofit Zero Waste McMinnville. Incredible kind of community organization, dozens of volunteers, kind of pre-pandemic, kind of trying to make this Oregon's first zero waste city, and making really deliberate and strong efforts towards that. And then now he's this kind of leading into the attainable regenerative laboratories that we started. So it's a nonprofit that is trying to be waste to soil health, kind of facilitate waste to soil health projects around the world, and kind of that can be brought into commercial agriculture. And so kind of we're one of the tenants of that nonprofit initiative, as well as Dr. Elaine Ingham and the Soil Food Web. And so when I talk about, global leaders in soil health, she's amazing and has been kind of that voice for decades, and has really been influential all over the world in our understanding of the need for microbiology and ecosystems and universes, as you say, in our soil, and all the negative effects of not treating it that way, and the long-term negative effects, and the short-term negative effects of yield and things that are these shorter-term drivers. It can help there.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast is brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. Hey, sustainability nerds, if you run your farm with a high value on soil health, input reduction, and environmental impact, chances are you've thought about certification. Certified Naturally Grown is a farmer-to-farmer certification that demonstrates your commitment to ecological methods while keeping costs low and paperwork to a minimum, meaning you have more time to do the work you really love. This peer review model supports regional knowledge exchange and strengthens local farming networks. See why hundreds of farmers are choosing CNG. Find out more and apply at naturallygrown.org. That's naturallygrown.org. Today's episode is also brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and much more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. We have been using a BCS tractor on our farm since 2014, and it has saved the day and leveled the workload more times than I can count. And I find new ways to employ it every single season. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. All right, back to the show.
Tell me about like the day-to-day, how close do you feel to, kind of where you want this McMinnville location to go? Like, where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think this has the opportunity to be a case study, if you will. I don't like the term pilot because it's a very kind of technology readiness term, and this technology is there. I mean, insects have been doing this for more than hundreds of thousands of years, and they're pretty good at it. And all around the world, we're scaling kind of how we raise insects at a larger volume. But in terms of how it can be that community value, so not just a protein factory, not just a soil factory, but how can it be this circle, this incorporated into the community? And so here in McMinnville, it doesn't have to be very large to take all of the food waste. And so it's a little bit smaller than some of our other facilities. But we're taking, right now in our innovation center, we're taking food waste from Grand Ron Casino, all the pre-consumer food waste that it doesn't make it onto people's plates, and some local restaurants, Mac Market, like Brew Doctor Kombucha, they have some waste, and they're trying to be as zero waste as possible. And that's kind of where we're helping them with the most problematic challenges to that. Some of their SCOBY and other products come to us.
That's
What's that?
So much SCOBY. I mean,
so much SCOBY.
Made my own over the years. It's just like, what the hell am I gonna? I just buried them, and let the soil.
Yeah,
bio.
That works.
Yeah.
They have more than they could just bury in their backyard.
I bet that's true. Comes an environmental concern.
Yeah. But of course, as science geeks, we're all excited about that. We use the term, we're trying to facilitate kingdom integration
Totally. You're
Yeah.
merging.
That fungi, get that bacteria. Like we're ministers of this marriage anytime we can. And so SCOBY's kind of fun on that side, and you can do really fun things with fermentation to make the food more digestible for the insects. And so we're doing all sorts of fun projects like that out at our innovation center. But that's those are some of the waste streams, and then a really kind of consolidated view of the circle, especially that can be done here in McMinnville, is Humble Spirit, that restaurant, and they have source farms, and so the pre-consumer food waste from the restaurant feeds the insects, and the insects go right to the farm. So the larvae feed their chickens, the frass goes onto their soil, and it comes right back to the plate. And so just a perfect example of that circle in totality. Some of the larvae go to a trout farm, and then the trout come to their plate. That we're working with the same trout farmer that they source for their trout. So that's the model we're trying to do here. So how do we keep all the product as regional as possible?
Yeah.
We have local Buchanan feeds here. They sell insect larvae. They're so great, and they're so supportive of trying to bring a local source of feed into their mix. And
so lucky to still have Buchanan. I'm just all the time. It's a miracle that that they still exist, and now it seems like they could not just exist but thrive really significantly.
I don't think calling it a miracle is an understatement. That's a hard business model. That business model has died out. The consolidation that's happened in agriculture has just been crushing for the smaller players, but Buchanan's kind of weathered through it all.
Yeah, it's amazing. So just a total tangent here, but because I'm personally always looking for an opportunity to get the community a little bit more engaged. Are the wineries participating? Are they do you have to get ratios right in terms of like the feedstocks for the insects? Because the pumice from fermentation is a major waste stream, and a lot of smaller projects like mine, we can compost our own if you have enough of the brown material to like make it work. But I could see that as being a pretty amazing solution for what does go away in these giant, what do you call them? The railroad truck dump bins, everyone we have
shipping containers. Yeah. So the kind of meeting the world where it's at, the easiest way to do an insect farm is a protein factory. And to do that, you want the same product being fed to the larvae every day. And so then you have the same fat to protein ratio coming out, and it comes out every day, and it goes to those markets just like what they want. It's just this more. And so then when you start feeding them kind of different waste streams that are only available for 2 months out of the year, like pumice, it just makes it harder.
Right.
And so they will eat it and they love it, but it's just more challenging for us, and it makes it harder for that capital to come into the space. That's all. And so that's why we're trying to be more patient with capital and show this as a community need, because we would love to take the pumice from the wine industry. Yeah. We've done plenty of studies. It's fantastic. It just makes it harder for us when it comes 2 months out of the year. And then we have to marry it with something else. And then we have to, tomato season. And so we just kind of have to put the mosaic together, which is not a business model that classic investors want to see. They want to see make a cog, rinse, repeat, externalize all the costs.
Right. So the protein is really where the rubber meets the road in terms of the capital investment. They're not because I could just hypothetically, you guys can edit this out if it gets a little too geeky for you, but I'm personally interested. So if, for example, you knew you had the guarantee that the frass would all have a local outlet, like a local paying outlet, does that offset the need for the protein to be?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's a big part of what we're doing, is trying to find what's the highest value to the producer. Like, where can frass really elevate? Like, of course, they would pay more for it if they see doubling of yield, whatever that is. A big side of the value is pest mitigation, whether that's fungal, bacterial. Frass is really showing promising at addressing some big problematic, spotted molds and things like that. We're looking at potato industry and cannabis, and kind of it plays that role in IPM strategy as well. And so trying to put that kind of more premium space, more of an additive where you don't need a lot. And so it fits within your dollar per acre business model. It fits in with just a little bit. And so like I said earlier, we produce twice as much frass as we do larva. And so just small incremental increases in the price, local markets, less shipping, go a long way in changing the business model and the economics of a facility.
So on the farm, talk about some of the trials that you're doing and what any sort of preliminary exciting things that you've observed or recorded.
Oh my goodness. It's all interesting. Leafy greens are like the most obvious when we've added frass to leafy greens. Like we have a project out there right now. It's just like we have 3 lettuce plants in a row. It's like striking. It's like a little bit of frass, it's double the size. A little bit more, it's triple the size. This is amazing. Healthy, rich green leaves. So pretty much I would say the frass side of trials are the more exciting because of everything we're talking about. It really unlocks that upstream feed opportunities a lot more to really be this problem solver from a food waste perspective. So that's personally what I get most excited about is the frass. And we have frass in the hands of several producers. We're working with the wine studies program at Chemeketa Community College. So we'll see, hopefully the amount of bunches that change it in next season. That will be, hopefully a big lever if we see an increase because of the frass. That's one of our hypotheses. Other projects have seen that. And then I come from water, so I always geek out about water projects. We're working on one with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, where a big problem that they see is phosphorus runoff from fish farms into the Columbia Basin. They're trying to figure that out. How can we have less phosphorus runoff? And this is the fun term of the day when trout eat insects. Again, kind of the gut microbiome. They have higher fecal integrity, which I think is a fun way to say that they don't have diarrhea, basically, right. Which they do if you feed them soy and you feed them corn. Their gut is not programmed for that. And so those kind of water quality projects are fun ones. We started a research center with the National Science Foundation with several other industry players and then several universities. And so the NSF has a model. It's called the Industry University Collaborative Research Centers, where you have industry and the industry needs, and then you have university and academia and their research capabilities. And together we direct kind of the funding of NSF and commercial funded research projects. So it's that good marriage between academia and kind of real world applications. And so we're doing some of that work here, and that kind of deeper science is really fun and exciting. And that's where some of that like kingdom integration and the interactome is a fun word of I think a good synonym with interactome is Gaia.
Yeah.
There's value in the in-between spaces.
Yeah.
You can't model that linearly.
No, because we don't know what we don't know. And we still haven't asked the most interesting questions. So yeah, I'm a big believer in the spaces in between. So have you looked at any of the sort of, I'm sure Elaine is very plugged into this, but have any of your trials been able to look into the recovery of durable soil microbiology with the addition of, or the return of the frass to agricultural soils?
Yes, and those are long-term projects.
Yeah.
To really see that, and so we've initiated that, and first things first, like get a real thorough baseline assessment. So we've really mapped out baseline conditions, and that's one of the cool things of working at this farm and Ramsey kind of opening up his farm. He's got 500 acres there, and right now there's 40 acres that we're just mapping out all the trials on. Dr. Lane is mapping out, but yeah, we're at that. We've cataloged kind of baseline information, and then now what's our research plan for looking at biodiversity, looking at resilience through microbe. And we're working with kind of other innovators in the space. There's biome makers. It's like the 23andMe of soil microbiology. So you can start to kind of quantify and measure and make an attempt to at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all cool. And I think anybody who is drawn to a project that's young like this is invested in an outcome that you're invested in as well. And so you're sort of drawing the right people in. Maybe they see opportunities, but we still don't know. Again, we still don't know the most interesting questions we haven't asked yet. Yeah, it'd be cool to look at some like nutrient density stuff. Let's set up some more trials.
Yeah. The nutrient density is high on the list. Like that. Yeah. Yes, please. Because that's so important for all of this work. Like, can we valorize nutrient density? Because it's really critical to our health. Yeah. And so if there are management practices that are harder or maybe more costly that create that nutrient, that producer, that farmer should be rewarded for that. There should be a bigger market for that.
I have, let's definitely talk offline about that. I have lots of ideas about how we could get something like that going right away. So,
thank you. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, let's put a mass spec on it and use some science to get people stoked about.
Let's mass spec that sucker.
That's right. All right. Okay. So, on Ramsey's farm, he's such a pillar of the community. And how much do you think? Actually, let me back up a little bit, because one of the things that I don't fully understand about the model is it kind of like, I hate to use this terminology, but is it kind of like chain stores where like you're citing these things and you're doing all the background work, but somebody else is actually going to run it? Or do you own it all? I mean, how does that, it seems really big. How does that work?
Yeah. It's kind of, again, an evolution as we're pioneering this. And so right now, there isn't a model where you could just build it and then say, go ahead, run this thing. We're building the workforce. And we actually got a big grant next year specifically for that, for workforce development, working with Chemeketa and some other community partners. Like, we need a human force, and farming is not all science. It's art and science and feel. And so you can't just hand some SOPs over to what is farming, what is agriculture, and expect it to work. And so we're invested in the long-term health of these projects. And so right now, our model is we build it, we own it, we operate it. And if you have something of value and want to share in the early stage, whether that's capital, then you take some ownership, and we'll share some ownership of it. If you have the land, take some ownership of this, And so it's a kind of co-owned facility, but we're operating it right now. We're building the workforce to operate these facilities. And that's where, kind of getting back into Oregon, the creativity we have, like ownership in kind of broken financial systems. There's innovative models for different models of ownership. And so, there's Patagonia and their perpetual purpose trust model. And, that's kind of new. And there's some really innovative examples of that here in Oregon. So it can be it should be a community owned project as well. But that just complicates it. We're kind of regularly complicating things.
But I think that is the way forward. I mean, we need to embrace complexity again. It doesn't necessarily have to be complicated, but it will be complex if we regionalize our food systems, because what now we're basically just burning up in inefficiencies. We need to pull that back in, and it's not going to come with these very linear, simple. It's going to be building some complexity into our own systems and having some redundancy and having some sort of community ownership of things. And so I think it couldn't be owned by a better mind than yours, because you're open to those ideas. And I think, people who are strictly from that investment world or the business world, that can be very threatening. But having a bridge personality like yourself to start breaking down some of the assumptions that we make about what would go wrong in a community-driven, community-serving infrastructure like this. That's what needs to happen now. We know that it's not we know that it's not working.
Yeah, that was a little bit too much credit to me. I think like it's the start point. I think that watershed hydrology background, like watershed level thinking, systems thinking, community thinking, like that. I'm certainly not the only one to hold that view, but it is that kind of mentality is critical. Absolutely, the life shed. This is here for everyone. Ownership should be representative of that, et cetera. If you have short-term capital that's only there for short-term capital interest and not often you're incentivized to maximize that interest at the detriment of the community around it, of the long-term health of that community. So the financial model, we're pretty adamant that it looks like something that they are a stakeholder, they are a community, they are a critical member of this project, they are a critical stakeholder in this, and so we will address their needs as well. But it has to be aligned with everyone there. If they're not there, the project just doesn't happen. These are, when you build a building, it costs money. And when you have equipment, it costs money. And so, I have a lot of role models out there as well. I follow Phil Taylor and communicate with him out at Mad Agriculture. Really like kind of that crusade of this. Of course, this should be more bioregional and customizable, and agriculture is not chains, as you say. Actually, so one of the things that has been helpful for that kind of longer term incentives, we've recently gotten some grants to fund some of our projects, and to the credit, it's looking at longer term vision of how can this capital benefit the nation. Draw the line there. So we as a community here in the United States, how can kind of federal money go towards the benefit of it? So an example of that, we're a sub-awardee on a grant project for building shipping container models, and we're dropping them on 6 farms around the U.S., none of them in Oregon. There's 2 in Mississippi, 1 in Kentucky, 1 in upstate New York, 1 in Michigan, and 1 in Georgia. And the starting point is what does this farm produce? They're all going onto smallholder farms. And so what are the waste streams that this farm produces? Okay, and we'll customize around that. This will look like it, but the metrics of success are incredibly bioregional. It's circular economics of that farm. And so can this system manage waste, offset fertilizer costs, offset feed costs, and increase profitability? So, we don't have to just look at increasing revenue. Increasing profitability is an incredibly potent way to address more bioregional, more, circular designs. And so, that's an exciting project that we're working on. We'll be building those out next year. We have an example of one. We built one at our innovation center here in McMinnville, but that's that like community lens, is because it will be owned by this producer, and we'll educate them, and we'll be a part of that, the workforce development. But the economics are focused on the balance sheet of the farmer.
That's so cool. Because if the transportation part can become, because I'm one of my next questions was about the barriers. And, I think when I think of places where, remote farming communities, rural communities, where having a closed loop waste stream should be so obvious and easy, but the transportation piece becomes kind of a significant barrier. That those modular options are amazing, especially if you think about, the reductions in fertilizer cost, or even, IPM strategies that cost money in our inputs. That could be part of, building the story of how this really starts changing the game everywhere. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So 6 of those next year.
Six of those. Yeah. And that was, funded by the USDA. And so we're excited about that, of just kind of demonstrating that model. It's already being done all over the world. Africa's got these container systems, and their, World Wildlife Federation has helped train, I think their number was like 40,000 people on how to grow black soldier flies at that small community level. Like this is happening already. So we're just kind of pushing it along here in the US.
It's so funny where necessity has made innovation happen, in places where it should be harder to make shit happen. And here we could do anything. We could literally make anything happen, and it's harder. It takes more time and convincing. Good for you.
This is a country of abundance in terms of natural resources. We have so much water, we have so much land, we have so much, fertility. So it's that scarcity it's not blatantly in front of us like it is in other parts of the world. But the salinity of our soil is increasing. Like, we're headed in the direction of scarcity. Our groundwater tables are declining. Like that. It's not like, it's just not. Unfortunately, we're such an 11th hour species, and we're not in the 11th hour here in the United States. So
we don't think we are anyway. I think just assume we can eat everyone else before it comes to that.
Yeah, it's still it's only 10:30 here. Yeah,
still on 10:30. And so, okay, you've been really generous with your time, and I don't want to keep you from all of the awesome things that you're doing. But what do you want people to know? What did I not ask that I should have asked? And any other. One thing I definitely want to make sure that people understand is the opportunity that the soldier fly represents, specifically because of the breadth of things that can be, food for them. So do you want to just kind of explain a little bit more about the biology of soldier flies and how much of an opportunity that is? I mean, independent of needing to have this output that people want to invest in, but just as an independent producer, let's say if you did, a small scale sort of modular soldier fly operation, how big of an opportunity that really is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of neglected to really highlight the star of the show, the black soldier fly, and they are. Yeah, so they're a great entry into insect agriculture, a fantastic starting species. Again, saprophytic, they eat rotting, decaying materials. It can be high bacterial spikes, high viral loads, and that their gut microbiome homogenize that. They really create that ecosystem out of outbreak type waste streams. And so what our the different models we have in the large commercial model, we're really trying to optimize efficiency, time, and everything. What it looks like is the material comes in, and then we grind it up to be just as consumable as possible. We'll ferment it, break down some of that lignocellulosic structure. So maybe 2 days of fermentation, grinding, and then we put it in trays. And so we dose these trays, and we put it, depending on the size of the tray, anywhere from 50 pounds to 100 pounds. These are kind of this particular system. And then we add the black soldier fly enters that waste stream at their neonate stage. And so they're called 5 days old at that point. So 5-day-old larva enters the scene now. And in a course of, if we get that front end right, in the course of 6, 7, 8 days, they will eat 100% of that material and grow exponentially. And then so we can harvest that tray 7 days later. So 1 week later, let's call it. And by harvesting, we dump that tray and we separate. The larvae go one way and the frass, their manure, goes another way. And then in commercial applications, we dry that material out. You can grind the larva down to the fats and proteins, or you can keep it in its whole form for chicken. Go to any feed store, and then 5% of right now about that of the larva then go back into the life cycle. And so from the larva stage, then they pupate into a fly, and they don't typically eat as a fly state. They mate for a couple of days, and they lay eggs. And so we harvest their eggs, just like you harvest chickens, eggs from chickens. Harvest the eggs, put them in our incubator, grow them for 5 days at the neonate stage, and start the cycle all over again. And so that's one of the other reasons why they're a good entry point is because they don't consume energy in the later stages of life. They're just hyper accumulating nutrients. So it's just they're voracious eaters at that larva stage, so they can store it for later phases of life. And so that's just tray-based system. So you kind of look at that now at a container size. You can have a much smaller tray. How can you make this so that one person could work it? So make a smaller tray size. Maybe you don't grind it up as much, and so it takes 2 weeks. And they'll eat just about anything. It's just how fast they do it. So kind of put the waste stream in more or less what it looks like, without a lot more processing. Shut the container. 2 weeks later, come back and harvest. And with the sophistication of precision climate control systems and predictive weather analysis, you can really drop the energy needs of that pretty significantly. You could make it all solar powered at this point. Keep it under a kilowatt. Even though what we're doing, I left out kind of a critical piece, is the climate that they like is a kind of a tropical climate. So it needs to be warm. But in that process of them, voraciously eating, they generate a lot of heat. They generate a lot of their own heat. And so it's just kind of recapturing their heat and, a lot of the moisture, they vaporize a lot of that, really wet feed that we're feeding them. And so it's just kind of reusing some of that heat and moisture.
Super cool. So, okay, now I'll ask, is there anything that you wish I had asked that I didn't ask, or anything that you really want people to know?
Good question. I should have had that one in advance. I feel like I blabbered on. I'm not sure I really cohesively connected all the dots necessarily, but
I think you did,
yeah.
man.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
In it anyway. I'm on board.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. No, I don't know that there's anything I wish you had asked necessarily. I think we got into kind of the deeper pieces that don't always rise to the surface of communication. One of the things I learned when I was in the cricket bar days, when you had to just, you were marketing it with one-liners and just sound bites. It's got to be Instagram marketing, like bah, 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 bah. How do you take these deep concepts and communicate them so concisely? Well, you don't. That's the answer. And so
matter.
The line I had, I decided on, okay, I think I can accomplish my mission more if I talk about it less. And so a lot of these topics that we've discussed, I don't talk about because that's you lose people.
Yeah, these are special people listening, and I also think that we do need to find our way back to the anti-soundbite version. We need to reclaim our intelligence and our capacity for critical thinking. So I appreciate that you gave us the the real.
Oh, I appreciate you. That's exactly what you're doing. Like, this format is so great for that. So thank you so much for having these deeper conversations with very incredible people working on some of this more ecosystem design.
Totally. I love it. It's the most fun. So just lastly, what's inspiring you right now? What's giving you hope? I mean, I feel like you're kind of you've intentionally surrounded yourself by hopeful things, which is very awesome. But is there anything in particular that you are inspired by right now?
I'm inspired by so much. I think that I like the line, I'm not an optimist, I'm a prisoner of hope.
That's a great line.
There's no other choice. I'm in this cell. But I'll call out Chemeketa Community College and their agricultural innovation program. In particular, some of the people working there, of just the passion that they have for trying to usher in functional places for the next generation to enter into agriculture. Because, man, what a challenge that is. There is not easy opportunities for younger generation to enter into agriculture. That's a hard model, as farming has gotten consolidated and things, that these smaller farms are fewer and fewer. And gosh, that entry point is not. So I'm inspired by the work of others like that and programs like that to really try to create these entry points for the next generation, because we're handing them a very large burden.
I'll say. Well, that's a beautiful ending. And I think I really appreciate you calling them out, because I think that they do a lot of work that isn't the obvious bicycle. And for that to be sort of at the community college accessibility for young people who maybe aren't interested in the more traditional roles in agriculture, being able to build that diversity from the ground up through innovation with people like you and others, I think it's such a strength that we have in our community, having those institutions. So glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a hell of a conversation. I'm so excited to share this with our people who listen. And I really appreciate your time. I really hope that
all mine. Yeah.
give me some more time, because I have a whole lot of I have a whole lot of people that I work with, and I want to do trials everywhere. And I want to get you some nutrient density wands to wave around. So let's find each other soon. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best. I'm so grateful that you're in our community, and I'm so excited that we finally got to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you, Mimi. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and be a part of this community. So thank you for the welcoming, opening arms. It means the world.
All right. Well, take care. Give Ramsey a hug for me, and I hope we'll have a beer together soon.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Right. Okay. Thanks so much.
How cool is it that is right in my backyard-ish? Pat Crowley. I highly recommend you check out that website. There's so much going on with what they're building. And if you are interested, or if you happen to be swimming in silos of cash and want to make a cool investment, I think it's a pretty smart one. Look at the ways that it makes sense. Also, I just kind of regret not giving him an opportunity to speak to this in case it comes up in anybody else's mind grape. But I did some research in advance, wanting to, walk a line of ecological integrity for myself. And, the saprophytic soldier flies really aren't an ecological threat in terms of, them being present and even farmed in this way. It's not a category of insects where there's a tremendous threat posed by adding soldier flies. So I just wanted to call that out. And, hopefully you guys come up with lots of other cool questions about soldier flies. But I'm telling you, the more I read about these, or organisms and all the cool things that they do and can represent in sort of ecological healing and developing and designing closed loop systems. Pretty rad. So look for more of this to happen in the future. Try to make more of it happen in the future. I'm really looking forward to bothering Pat with some of my trial ideas. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that recording. I want to take this opportunity to thank my awesome friends and comrades at the No-Till Growers Market Garden podcast for letting me hang out some more. I highly recommend listening to some of the kick-ass episodes that my co-hosts have been putting out this season. Alex and Natalie have already been kind of slaying it. So got to keep my game high, people. I'm going to go rest up for the next big game.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Real quick, some things that we have going on. First, I just want to give a special shout out to Jackson Roulette, who is the co-founder here in No-Till Growers. His garden was recently demolished by a very centralized tornado, so that's fun. Anyway, Jackson is a huge part of what we do, and I just want to share the GoFundMe page they have to try and replace those tunnels. That link is in the description, and it would mean a lot to me and to Jackson if you kicked in even a couple bucks. We'd really appreciate it. If you are looking for things to do this holiday season as you travel around, consider our YouTube channel with hundreds of technical videos and farm tours, or just go into the archives of this podcast and see what you can dig up. A lot of stuff gets forgotten to time, so go check that out. There are many great gems in this feed alone. We also have the No-Till Growers Forum over at no-tillgrowers.com that you can visit and discuss all things no-till. Here are a few places you can also find me this winter of 2023-2024. I will be at the 2024 Dallas Inner City Grower Symposium in Texas, the Utah Food and Farming Conference at the Red Acre Center in Utah. That one is coming right up. Of course, I will also, as always, be at the Organic Association of Kentucky conference called Oak here like 15 minutes from where I am right now at my home farm. Oak is in January. The Organic Grower School outside of Asheville, North Carolina will be the last event I do in March. All the links for those will be in the show notes, and also linked in the show notes is our shop where you can find my book, The Living Soil Handbook, or hats or other merch. Purchasing those things helps support what we do. Alternatively, you can join the hundreds of donors who support us through patreon.com/no-till-growers. That is the absolute lifeblood of our work. And at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Abraham, Chris Yates, Sean at All About the Garden, and Stephen Smith. Huge shout out to everyone who supports us in whatever way that you can. You all are amazing. Otherwise, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. Bye.